Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another trek through Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation Novel Series 1, Volume 23, Chapter 6. It's time to get to Chapter 6. Wasn't able to get to it last week. Chapter 5 turned out to be a much longer chapter for me to get through than I originally expected. I thought Chapter 6 would be the long one, but we're here. We're finally here to jump into Chapter 6. This is an absolutely crazy chapter full of so much freaking stuff that just has my mind going in a billion directions. But before we get into that, thank you guys so much for dropping by for the premiere. Hey chat, hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Monday after Mushoku Monday. Greatly appreciate everybody's kind words, their support. So much outpour of support last week. It meant so much to me. You guys are absolutely amazing. All the kind words. Everybody joining me as I get super emotional. I greatly appreciate that support. It just going through the Mushoku Monday for me is like I have to go through that whole thing again. I get the emotion going in me again, and so to have everybody there was just absolutely amazing. And yes, greatly appreciate everybody's support monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. It means a great deal to me. Crazy amount last week. So freaking amazing. Nicholas last week hit 17 months membership. Thank you so much for the long time support, and dropped 50 gifted memberships. Thank you. It means so much. Just raining the emotes on everybody. Orsted Cultist with 11 months. Thank you so much for the long time support. Noah with 19 months. Crazy. It's getting up there. It's like it's reminding me how long we've had memberships. It's like way up there. But also that super chat. Thank you so much. Lou Frog with a super chat. Kusha with a super chat. What the fan art with super chat. Beto with 19 months. Again, we're getting up there. Royce Moith with 2 supers. Thank you so much for the support. It means so much to me. Totally Not an Eel with a super. Infernal Torch with a whole bunch of supers. Thank you so much, Infernal Torch, for your support. And Adrian with 16 months. 16 months plus of just banning bad chatters. I'm joking. Thank you guys so much. It means a great deal to me. It's without you guys, would not be able to do this. Thank you. But yes, with all the mushy stuff out of the way, let's just dive into this absolutely crazy chapter. This is literally a continuation of Nanahoshi's hypothesis. Let's dig back into here and just make Andrew's brain break, because I hate time stuff. Because it's always in that realm of like, how are they going to handle the whole idea of time continuums, consistency in the time? Is it going to be parallel worlds? Is it going to be the same world? How do you deal with the idea that why would you send somebody back when technically you fix the thing that you would need to send yourself back for? All that stuff, it annoys the fire out of me. But we'll get into it. Let's get into it. Chapter 6. Nanahoshi's fate. It was finally the day for Nanahoshi to return home. The only others present in the hall of teleportation was Pedigus and Rudius, plus all the familiars. Nanahoshi insisted she didn't want a crowd to see her off. She said that she already bid her farewells, so she must have seen them exactly the way that she wanted to remember them. Their formation was the same as before. Rudius was a mana tank. Pedigus and his spirits directed and maintained the flow. Nanahoshi stood at the center of the magic circle. Don't like it. She faced Rudius, dressed in travel attire, with an enormous rucksack on her back. It was stuffed with a vast array of items to prepare her for what she might find on the other side. Neither one of them had ventured outside the borders of Japan before coming here. That was why she also packed some items she could trade for local currency, along with her ID, magic crystals, and scrolls. Who knows if the last 2 things would work where she was going. And yes, I had this question mark. I think I talked about it last Mushoku Monday. I had this massive question mark of, if she goes there with magic crystals, because again, she doesn't have mana. She can't produce that mana. She can't do her own spells. So she had to always rely on magic crystals or somebody else to provide for her work. But what I was bringing up before was the idea of like, once she goes there, she's not coming back. This is absolute goodbyes right here. Yes, there's a thought process that if she went over there, could she create a way of getting back, and thus she can visit whenever she wants? No, she can't, because, again, Rudius has to be involved here. That much mana. It's not like she's going to pack herself with, like, this massive backpack full of tons of magic crystals that she could be able to do the teleportation again to get back over here. Once she's gone, it's gone. This is a one-way road right here. Now, yes, there could be the idea that some magic crystals can have more density of mana in it. Like, she can have a crystal that has a single crystal has the amount that Rudius has. But I doubt that. I assume that like it's equal aspect, like the size of the gem typically can. Well, I guess they've kind of indicated that some gems could have more. I don't know. That's a good question mark. Or maybe modifying crystals to be able to, produce more mana than usual or contain more mana than usual. But yeah, the joke there, as we made before, is the idea of her sitting down her backpack and saying, hey Elise, fill up this backpack full of crystals. But again, going over there, the question mark is there going to be the same effect there that when she arrives there, magic itself just disappears? Like, she will obviously not have the effects of the drying syndrome anymore when she goes over there, so that she's going to be safe physically. But will the crystals that she bring with her suddenly turn into useless gems? Do they lose their mana? Is she going to be able to cast spells when she goes over there using, the magical implements that she has that Orsa gave her? The one that she had to save herself from Sylphie. Is she going to be able to use those rings over there? Or do they just kind of crumble when they get there? Do they lose their magic? What? Is the scrolls going to be useful? That's all a massive question mark there. But, I mean, this is obviously finally answering a big question mark that I had for the longest time. Not a big question mark, but it was a question mark that I had at some point was, what does she come here with? When she arrived in this world, when she appeared in this world, the assumption was that she just appeared in the middle of nowhere, stark naked, and then Orsa walked up and was like, hey, what's going on? And then puts coat on her, and they start traveling around. We've never really kind of gotten an indication that she has, like, her old outfit and everything there. Like, when Rudius first met her in that world, or in this world, she was wearing a different outfit, and she walked by them. If she was wearing an actual Japanese schoolgirl outfit, I think he would immediately go, hey, that's an Japanese schoolgirl. I think there was an indication there based on her name, of course, and her hair, but there was no other indication in her clothing itself. It was clothing of this world. So right here, by saying with her ID, means one or two things here. One, that she could still have her school ID from back when she was in Japan, which means that she had her clothing and everything transferred with her. So this implies here that she can transfer back. Obviously, it implies it because she's wearing all this stuff. This implies that she can travel back there with items. And so thus the ID might actually be hers. Now, it could be an ID that she made here. But that was an interesting question mark that was sort of, I had in my head is this a new ID or is this ID that she had when she transferred over here? And yeah, I would assume that you'd want to bring like gold coins especially to go over to the other world because then you can actually trade that. Now that does put herself in danger because traveling around with a bunch of gold, as soon as somebody finds out that you have gold or whatever, you're going to have a lot of tension there. But still, you need something to be able to get some money to get a flight or whatever. All she had to do was rely on her wits and courage for the rest. I think Nanahoshi's been through so much. I mean, she's basically an adult in the mind. Like, she has been through so much stuff that has really helped her grow maturely. I mean, she's gone through near-death experiences. It's going to toughen her up a bunch. This girl's going to be able to face a lot of stuff. They traded glances. Nothing was said. Whatever words needed to be spoken had been spoken last night. Rudius, are you prepared? It felt more like a command than a question. Rudius pressed his hand onto the apparatus. Same routine, no changes. It was practiced numerous times by now. Not all tests were successful, but when they failed, they located the issue and refined the process so that the mistake wouldn't happen again. Pedagus and Rudius were already veterans at this. Well, Rudius was just a battery. Veteran battery. Ready. Nanahoshi, I assume you are prepared. Yes, Lord Pedagus. Thank you for everything. Your gratitude is unnecessary. You've taught me a few amusing trifles. You know, you sad boy. Pedagus is such a tsundere. Their parting words were short and succinct. Once finished, they tore their gazes away from one another. Nanahoshi looked back to Rudius, and Pedagus directed his subordinates with his eyes. Very well, let's begin. With his signal, the apparatus began to power up. The process was exactly as it always had been. The circle glowed brighter, blue, green, then white. Rudius focused as to not make a mistake with his supply of mana. Rudius' experience meant he knew the intervals when it needed power by heart. He was careful to ensure a sustained, constant flow of mana with no dearths or excess. Exactly as before, the circle's glow turned black. I had so many theories on this whole thing. Of course, like, when it got to this point, I'm, like, already going, oh, damn, here it goes. The man god's getting involved. The man's god, they're sending in the forces. I knew it was coming. I was waiting for, like, the attack to happen. Wait, hold up a second. Rudius never recalled it turning black before. He had a bad feeling about this. Rudius! Pedagus barked out. The black glow was glowing more pronounced by the second. Rudius was worried whether they should continue or not, but since he wasn't in control, he had no way of making the call. Lord Pedagus, your orders. More mana. Rudius obeyed and forced even more power through his hands. It was no longer a flow. It was a flood. Strength fled from his legs, and his vision was blurred. In spite of his best efforts, the blackness refused to fade. Instead, Rudius felt something threatening to spill out. The sensation crawling up his fingers, hands, and arms. It was a dreadful, entirely new sensation. This can't be good, Rudius thought. Could he make the call to shut it down? After all, Pedagus had ordered him to give it more power. He needed to have faith in him. Snap, a sound echoed around them. The light from the magic circle faded immediately. It was as if a breaker had popped, and the power went out. It was so instantaneous that it struck Rudius as odd. Normally, if something went wrong, it was a gradual ebb, as the circle lost power. This was different. It was almost as if something had sucked out all the mana before it extinguished. Rudius's lips thinned. Not all the light in the room had faded. The candles in the corner were still lit. A deafening silence reminded Rudius of a computer with its power suddenly cut. And sadly, plain as anything, Nanahoshi stood inert at the center of the circle. I was just happy she was safe. I had like this mindset of like, oh, if this stuff like breaks midway through, could it like possibly only transport part of her? And then thus she's like sitting there and she's dying. Ugh. I was like, this entire time I'm just dreading what's happening next. Because again, in my mindset here, I was dead set on not dead set, but one of my major theories was they were going to get attacked by the man god. This was going to be the moment that they jump in there, because Rudius is going to be at his lowest in mana pool, especially if something's messing with this and requiring more mana. Like, if I do this, if I mess with the situation, Petagus is going to call for more mana. Rudius is going to pour everything he's got into it. He's going to start losing strength in his own body because he's pouring so much mana into this thing, and then we attack. And even Petagus might be having to use some of his mana in order to control this circle. He's having to orchestrate it. There could be a chance that him controlling the mana flow could require some of his own mana. Or he might just, in general, be supplying his own mana. Rudius is just supplying most of it. It's like all these question marks pop in my head, and then suddenly things are starting to break. It's turning black. It's sucking him in. He's getting weak and everything. I'm like, holy crap, here we go. Here we go. They're going to attack right now. Now, I would be shocked that Petagus wouldn't notice something happening. Now, it could be because this process requires so much of his attention, he wouldn't notice somebody attacking. That could be part of the whole choice of attacking then, is not just Rudius being weakened, but Petagus is going to be focused on that. The familiars are going to be focused on that. Either way, it was like, I just felt like something was going to happen here. But no, I was happy that Nanahoshi was safe. Because again, I have this like mental image of just transportations messing up, and the idea of it just completely cutting somebody in half, just wrecking them or whatever, only moving their mind, only moving their soul, only moving the body, all that kind of stuff was all floating in my head at the same exact time with this whole part. Just, ugh. But no, I mean, I'll get into it later on, obviously, because I had theories around this whole segment, and it was mostly around them getting attacked. I did really have a massive question mark around, at this moment, before what we get into in a minute, about the idea of somebody sort of trying to affect Rudius himself. I mean, he specifically says it was almost as if something had sucked out all the mana before it extinguished. Now, that could just simply be in the idea of the magic circle itself. Like, the mana transported, it just didn't pull Nanahoshi with it. So something sucked out all the mana from the circle. It could have been strictly the process was messed up, the mana was sent, the energy was sent, but she wasn't transported with it. Now, that could get into some stuff later on, which we'll get into again with the idea of somebody manipulating it from possibly the future or something like that. It's just interesting that there's so much emphasis here on a sensation going up his fingers, his hands, his arms, a dreadful, entirely new sensation. It wasn't good. Obviously, the idea of the strength leaving him and the vision being blurred is going to be an effect of how much mana is pulling from him. He's going to get weak. But specifically the blackness and all that kind of stuff definitely kind of intrigued me as the idea of somebody being able to affect Rudius directly, which did get me into the idea of somebody being remotely attacking and setting up for an actual attack of the floating fortress, but I couldn't really draw any conclusions. But no, I did get a kick out of the idea of the silence. Reminded Rudius of a computer and its power suddenly being cut. Anybody with a massive like gaming rig or something like that, or just like a general computer, like you have that ambience noise that you get used to, and then at some point, if the power goes out, it's like, holy crap, this is what real silence is. I forgot what real silence is, because I usually when it's silent in my room, there's still a computer running, so it just becomes part of the background noise that you just get used to. Everyone was flabbergasted, Rudius included. He couldn't see the spirits' expressions under their masks, but the air of confusion hung heavily. Why? Why, Rudius Grey Rat? Huh? Me? What did I do? Rudius thought. He's like, wait, what? Wait, me? What? What do I do? Why did you cut off your supply of mana? Cut off? Rudius thought. What is he talking about? Rudius blinked at him. I give it power just like I was supposed to. But then why would? Rudius could guess what he was trying to ask. Why would the magic powering it suddenly disappear? Empathetically, Rudius hadn't cut off the supply of mana. He had increased it, in fact. He was just as confused as they were. Had something gone haywire with Rudius, and power stopped flowing like it was supposed to? Yeah, I could see an idea of possibly a direct interference with him, because again, he had a weird sensation. So it could be that, again, as we'll get into, if somebody is directly manipulating Rudius, could it be that they just affected him directly? It was hard to believe that it could be possible, considering the immense fatigue he was fighting. the same kind that he had always dealt with when he used a vast amount of mana. If the supply of mana had been cut off, then the circle would have lost power the moment that it happened. Petagus nodded thoughtfully. Yes, true. It did have mana. Why was it not fed to us? It was almost as if someone else interfered and harnessed the circle. That part I did not catch the first time. It was almost as though someone else interfered and harnessed the circle. Again, Rurius's mana went. I think that the way it's implying here, the mana went. So that makes me think that, with Petagus saying that, the idea again here is that something else utilized the circle, harnessed it, utilized it. I could be drawing too much into this, but what is the possibility that somebody else used the transportation? It's like I said before, it's almost as if the effect happened, the cart left the station, like the train left. It's just Nanahoshi didn't go with it. What is the possibility of somebody else utilizing that directed path to send something else out in her place? That's interesting. I don't think that's the case, but that's sort of what I'm drawing from there. Reese inspected the circle. There was a small fissure in the pattern. Had some sort of insect managed to disrupt the structure, causing it to short circuit? Some just come, just something directed something to just cause a little fissure. Just a little thing. Again, that was what I was saying before. This is why this is so terrifying. This slightest error, a small crack, single little etching crack, it goes haywire. It's like there's so much calculation happening with this thing. It's not even funny. Petagus growled under his breath. He cupped his chin and contemplating the meaning of it all. Nanahoshi silently stepped out of the circle, peeled the straps of her backpack from her shoulder, laid the heavy load on the floor. Then she walked stiffly towards the door, leaving the hall entirely. Reese glanced at Petagus, still lost in thought. His servants were listless. Reese wondered what to do now. He wanted to know what was the cause of the failure. But no, he left it to Petagus and hurried after Nanahoshi. Go get her, boy. Go get her. He's immediately like, I gotta get this girl. This is not good. This is where it said in that feature diary. We gotta go take care of her. I don't know. At this point, I figured, again, she knows about the failure. And I figured that there was a reason why she still had to do it. I figured there was still a reason that she had to do this transportation. Still try this method out. So I kind of still felt like she was going to be bummed. And even Rudius kind of himself says it like, yeah, she's still going to be broken by this. Like, I could go now or later. The thought process that she's accepted this idea of this theory, this hypothesis, that I have to be here. But yet she's still doing it. So I think she's still going to keep her in mind that this could still fail and have a second plan. The question, of course, is, did she figure out the second part of the plan? Because if she doesn't, there's where the problem lies. But at least in knowing so, this is more of an idea, well, I just don't leave now. I just don't leave now. I would have liked to, and I'm still going to be bummed that I can't leave now, but I just don't leave now. Nanahoshi was in her room, sitting on her bed, shoulders slumped, head hung. It was hard making out her expression. The atmosphere radiated exhaustion and resignation. In stark contrast, Reese wasn't all that shocked. He couldn't shake what his future self once told him, that in the end, it would fail. He had no way of telling whether this was the failure that he referred to, or if it was another one still awaiting them further down the road. That is true. I mean, they've kind of planed out the idea, this is the time. This is the moment. But technically, what he was saying was like that final test ruined her. I think it said in the end. Part of Rudius wished he asked more about it, so he would know. But there was little point in lamenting that at this moment. His future self told him how he'd failed to comfort Nanahoshi in this moment. What happened to her after that? His older counterpart tippy-toed around a direct answer, which seemed to indicate it was a wretched ending, just like this. Reese had to do a solid job comforting Nanahoshi this time. The problem was, how? Everyone experiences failures. Hope for the best results next time. That was cliche. Probably something his future self said. No, again, this goes back to the like always, and I think he did perfectly good job last time. Last time Nanahoshi kind of fell apart. He did a good job. You just have to be there. You just need to be there. You don't have to have these great words. You just have to be there. But yeah, what his future self said, that's a massive question mark. I never really thought about that. Maybe not, though. He was so shattered after what happened to Roxy. He might not have managed anything like that. It was possible that instead said something much worse, driving Nanahoshi even further into despair. That's a good point. There's a good possibility that he was so nasty at that moment that he would have been more, I guess, trying to pull her into the darkness that he is. Like, not caring about things. Because sometimes, yes, it's opposites, of course. Like, there's neutral people that are going to be supportive in their own way. There's going to be overly positive people that'll be too bubbly, and it sometimes can be counter to what the person wants to hear. And there's going to be people that might be really in a dark place themselves, and all they can really provide is something that will drag them down deeper. Get darker into the darker depths with me, kind of thing. Things are terrible. You know, you don't have it that bad. That's the worst. That's the worst. You don't have it that bad. Like if somebody, like that's like the idea of a rich person saying that they're having a hard time at a loss. Like a rich person saying, I lost my dog and I'm just not doing very well. Excuse me? I scrape paycheck to paycheck and you're going to cry about me with your dog that you probably spent millions of dollars on treating and making nice little perms and everything. Oh, boo-hoo you. You think you got it bad. I think on both sides, it kind of falls in the same category of like, depending on where you're at mentally, it can have its own negative effects to somebody that's in a bad spot. So it's kind of interesting that he's even bringing up the idea of what did he actually say? But this gets worse. From what he knew of his future self, he seemed like enough of a degenerate that he couldn't rule out that he would exploit her vulnerability. Maybe he told her, just become his woman if she couldn't go home. I don't think he would. I don't know. I don't think he would have. I mean, they got into a couple like really bad gray areas with what he was talking about, with, like Julie and stuff like that. But I want to say that he wouldn't do anything to Nanahoshi like that. And even still, I think that somebody like Petagoose would have stepped in. I just think that Petagoose would have stepped in. Like, you know, you're not messing with Nanahoshi. Stay away from her. She would probably stay on the floating fortress. Now, the other thought that I have is, again, the idea that what if she, and I think he gets into it a little bit here later on, what if possibility that she did, nothing bad happened to her, but Petagoose had her be put in a suspended animation because of her illness and just told Viridius that she's gone. And maybe he assumed the worst. Maybe Petagoose lied to him in order to protect her. It's a question mark. Viridius kind of wished that he knew what kind of screw up his future self pulled. Then he'd have an idea of what to do. No, he had to think for himself. There was no wrong option here. And he had a burning curiosity about what it might be. Life wasn't normally like that. It wasn't a video game. He had to find his own words to console her with. He racked his brain. First thing that came to mind was when he consoled Sylphie. Take a seat beside her. Wrap your arm around her. Is that how you suggest those three? Nanahoshi interrupted, lifting her head and giving him a stare. Oh, oops. I like how it puts it here. It almost lays it out like he's actually like thinking about doing it, but no, he's literally, as he's thinking about doing it, he's literally doing it. She's like, I'm not your girls. Get your hand away from me. Sylphie will kill me, dude. But no, I honestly was thinking about the idea that she has, again, this future diary this time. That's the main key difference between these two timelines. Between the future diary and your future self, the one that came back in time, and this one, is that in this timeline, in this current play out of this timeline, she knows about the future. She knows what's to come, and she knows there might be something affecting it. She had a point. This was kind of sexual. My bad. He hastily removed his hand hovering over her shoulder. She cut him off before he could make eye contact. He folded his hands in his lap. So, Madam Nanahoshi, if you would permit me a moment of your splendid attention. What? I'm busy. Come on, don't be like that. When you feel like you're all alone in the world, it's important not to bottle it up. You'll feel better. It won't fix the problem, sure, but it can put you in a better mindset to tackle the problem more effectively. Once you're ready to. His voice trailed off as he noticed the notebook spread out on her lap. Japanese words scrawled on the page. At the top, it read, tentative theories about why the teleportation failed at the final stage. That was the wording that used. I think it used the words final stage. Girls like next step. Girls like next. Well, that didn't work. What next? Just already on the next stage. This girl is smart. This girl is really smart. It's probably going to be counter to what I'm going to get into with the idea of why she was sent here and why there's so much emphasis on the idea that she's somehow being planted in order for her to achieve something amazing, which seems to kind of put way too much trust in her pulling something off. But this girl is a thinker. This girl is a thinker. She has had her moments, of course. She has had her moments of weakness, and everybody's going to have their moments of weakness. But this is a girl that fights tooth and nail, and she's constantly thinking. This girl is literally a genius. I mean, we've gotten to that with the idea of her creating this massive teleportation circle. Yes, with the aid of Petagoose and his familiars, but this girl has literally, for years, trial, error, trial, error, trial, error, trial, error, notes, putting, got the whiteboard, and he's got all the stuff laid out there with all the pins and everything. It's just crazy how much this girl just is constantly thinking. It's a good thing that you told me ahead of time about this failure. Nanahoshi was tracing the Japanese characters on the page with her finger. If I didn't know, my first assumption might have been that there was something wrong with the magic circle itself. She lifted her gaze from the book. There was no trace of despair in her expression. Maybe he was wrong about her exhaustion and resignation. She had already mentally prepared herself for a possibility of failure. So he didn't need to console her. She still had to be crushed that it didn't work out. Yeah, I think so. But again, keep your mind moving. Sometimes the best way to get over an issue is just keep your mind moving. Now, there is a danger in that, in the idea that you're going to keep ignoring the problem until eventually it festers up so much that it breaks you. But I personally find that to be a great way of kind of keeping moving. That's like the idea of having stress and going working out. It's just to kind of get your mind to empty it out very momentarily, get something else in there, replace it with something else, and keep moving. And yes, there's kind of the mindset that I typically have, is like just sitting there dwelling on it. It's not going to make it fix. That's the sad reality. It's just, if I sit there and worry about it and get upset about it, it's not going to fix it. Suddenly, it's not going to suddenly undo the failure. Hey, do you remember when I talked to you before about my theory about how all this happened? It kind of rang a bell. He was pretty sure it was something far out and wild, but he didn't quite remember. Sorry, mind giving me a refresher? Damn it, Rudius. She gave him a cold, judgmental look. Fine, but I'm only going to summarize. First of all, the Fatoa displacement incident, which resulted when I was summoned here, should have never happened originally. Yeah, obviously. I mean, Orsted said that. Through all of his loops, there was never a displacement incident there. That never happened. That raised the question, why would something so irregular have occurred? When I heard that your future self traveled back through time to speak to you, I deduced that something in the future must have sent me here, to the past. No, since I'm not originally from this world, perhaps even more correct to say, the person responsible placed me here in the past. Again, we've already gotten this part kind of sussed out before, and I think they talked about before, where there's something that's going to happen in the future that she was sent back here to do, and thus if she doesn't succeed in that, she's never going to be able to leave home. That was her mindset. I can't leave here until this thing is completed, because that's why I was sent back here. Like this cycle is required to be finished. I'm stuck here until that thing is finished. But the problem here is saying specifically, I was placed here. The person responsible placed me here in their past. Thus meaning she's theorizing right here that I was never there. I was brought to here. I think my original theory that I had back when she had her hypothesis was the idea that she was brought to this world and then sent back to the past. Not so much the idea that Rudius and Nanahoshi at least, and possibly this other person that was with her, her boyfriend, too soon to be boyfriend, that they were sent here and they arrived at different timelines. That was the original thought process there, but more so the idea that they were brought to the future and then sent to the past. History changed the moment that someone who should have never existed suddenly appeared out of thin air, like dropping a rock into a tub that was already filled to the brim with water. My presence displaced the total amount of mana in the world, and as a consequence, the Fatoa region was wiped from existence. She got into this before, and I think if I remember correctly, if I still read it correctly, she was implying the idea that there was a cause and effect. That in order for her to be sent back to the past, when she was in this theory that she was in the future and then sent back to the past, the theory was that it required so much energy to be sending her back to the past to the point where she arrived at the Fatoa displacement incident, that it sort of required a reverse, a payment basically. The idea of a cause and effect. Because this energy comes here, the energy has to send something back. And so I think they were even implying the idea that some people never reemerged in the current time in our world. Like there was a displacement incident, everybody disappears, and then they teleport somewhere else and they fall or they land or they're underwater or whatever. People are different locations. They reappear at other locations. But there possibly is some people that never reappear. And the idea there was that some of those people were sent back towards the future. Back to the future. Like, again, there's a payment that has to be made. Like, a transaction has to be made. I have to send something back to replace what was sent. Like, there's a void after she was sent back that needs to be filled. It was familiar to Rudius. He was so preoccupied with other stuff at the time. They didn't really pay attention. It was still an absurd theory, to be sure. But if she was so focused, then it seems she really wasn't hung up over the whole teleportation failing. No, she had to be torn up. The whole nonsense spill is probably her way of trying to distract herself. He figured he'd humor her. Again, I think the wheels are already turning. And again, based on the fact that literally the night before she was talking to Rudius, she found out his identity and then probably went immediately to here. They got the whole teleportation set up. It failed. Time to work on that theory. I have new information to add to it. She's already working on the next step. And yes, she just got her confirmation here that this thing failed. Do you follow me so far? Yeah. She flipped a page in her notebook. This time, the line at the top read, "Who would do this and why?" She tapped the page. This is the crux of the issue here. I theorize someone in the future wanted to change the past, right? You might be wondering why I suspect someone from the future. Orsted himself is the clue. He was sent from the past to the present, where he keeps reliving the same period over and over in a loop. At present, there isn't a soul who can interfere with him, which makes him the most powerful of all, able to continue the same loop again and again, until at last, he achieves victory. Orsted was sent by his father, the first dragon god, who casts a secret art on him, which causes him to relive the exact same span of time. According to Orsted's own predictions, there was only one way to escape this loop, to defeat the man god. He had yet to bring down the man god, but he would someday. Nanahoshi wasn't exaggerating when she called him the most powerful. I don't think I've ever really thought about this. This is actually very interesting. Again, this is what Orsted said. This is true to what it's saying here. According to Orsted's own predictions, that's the interesting new word. I don't think we've ever had it stated predictions. Now, this is Rudius in his mind thinking this. According to Orsted's own predictions, in order to escape the loops, he has to defeat the man god. I never really thought about that. How does this work? This is a secret art that was used by the first dragon god on Orsted, sent him to this little time period right here, and he's going to live that out in order to try to defeat the man god, sent specifically here in order to take down the man god. What does that art look like? What is that art applied to him? What does it look like? Is it sort of a if-then type of coding that says if man god present, reset back to this point? If man god not present, continue on? That's the question mark. How does it know the man god needs to be destroyed? How does it know the man god is destroyed in order for it to stop? It kind of poses the question mark to me. What are the chances that the spell itself is fueled by the man god? That if the man god is present, it gets the mana fed to it that it needs in order to go back in time. So he goes there, he doesn't defeat the man god. Man god essentially being present, his there being there, fuels the art, sends him back. But it also begs the other question mark. Does it know if the man god's dead or not? There's like a question mark that I have. Is it going to always repeat that same timeline, assuming that he might not beat the man god, or it doesn't know if the man god's defeated or not? Like, it plays into my head the idea of what if we get to that point where the man god or Orsted is with. Of course, I've theorized before that I think Orsted is going to die before the end of the loop. I just have that belief that Orsted's going to die. I hate that idea. I don't want it to happen, but I just, for some reason, there's something feeding in my head that I think Orsted isn't going to be present for that fight. But if he is, my thought process here is if he does survive, and we do get to that later point, and we have Orsted, if Rudius somehow doesn't live that long, if it doesn't happen before then, I'm assuming it's still going to happen before then. If Rudius isn't there for the fight against the man god, you have him, possibly just his children, they're all side by side with Orsted. They walk into the Barrenlands, whatever. They get before the man god. They defeat him, and they're standing over his body, and they're like, yes, we finally did it. Scroll cast on the side. And they're like, oh, yeah, we made it. And then suddenly cut forward, and it comes to that point where typically Orsted resets, and he still resets. He just disappears. Orsted's gone. He's going to go to the other loops. That would be super tragic, because that means that Orsted, even then, is still never going to get out of the loops. But it just kind of makes me beg the question of, like, how do we know that that defeat actually caused it to stop working? It's weird. Sorry, my mind goes places like that. He'd yet to bring down the man god, but he would someday. Yeah, it's like an inevitability. Unless the man god figures out a way of stopping the art, erasing the art, breaking the art, it's going to be an inevitability. Nanahoshi wasn't exaggerating when she called him the most powerful. It is my belief that the reason why we're both sent here has something to do with the battle between the dragon god and the man god. How come? Because the first person I met when I found myself in this world was Orsted. I think I had a thought process there. It is actually very interesting, and this sort of plays into me sort of accepting the idea that it was Orsted that was involved in Nanahoshi being sent here, is the fact that she happened to be in front of Orsted. That doesn't make me believe that it was a man god. And again, a side of me wants to believe it's the man god just to be sort of an interesting twist to the whole situation, but to keep it simple and not to kind of do a cheap, fake out kind of thing here, I do see a lot of credit in the idea of it being Orsted. Because again, when the displacement incident happened, Orsted just happened to be there. Orsted happened to be the first person to meet her. Now, let's be honest. how many people are going to be rushing into the middle of this massive crater and finding Nanahoshi. Just the ability to find her in the mix of this massive, massive region that has been wiped out. You have to have some way of being able to find her. Orsted, could have a lot of the facilities to find what's in the middle as he's investigating it. Whereas typically most people, they're going to see an empty field and not be wanting to kind of venture into there. But still, the fact that he was nearby, he was present there, he experienced it, and he rushed out there. I think Orsted would know himself to know, yeah, if we send her here, I'll be around that area at the time. Perfect time to send her. I'll see her. Now, the other question mark I've always had is why didn't Orsted kill her the moment he's seen her? She's an anomaly. He's doing all these loops, waiting for the moment that he'll get everything in play and he'll be able to finally take down the man god. And he's done these loops over and over again and failed over and over again. This is a massive, massive alteration to the entire loops that he's done. This has never happened before. So suddenly randomly this massive displacement incident happens, and this random girl in the middle that doesn't even speak any of their tongues is just standing there in some weird outfit. He's got to be thinking this is something not normal, and it's going to break everything that's played out so far. It's already broke so much stuff that has never happened before. Get rid of her. She's a oddity. I can't have her in this existence. But could he have suspected that? Could Orsted's future self have known, I would see a massive displacement incident like that and think, this isn't normal. Let's investigate. Let's support this person. This could be something that benefits me in some way. We have never really gotten to full details of what Orsted really believes about Nanahoshi. And it could specifically be that Orsted believes that Nanahoshi is some sort of ticket that he needs for the future. It's just odd that he's never talked about it before. But it is a question mark I have always had with Orsted, is why did he support her so much? This is somebody that's trying to build towards defeating the man god. Why did he bother dragging her everywhere? It literally gets into specific details on a regular basis about how, like, again, he must have visited here with Nanahoshi in the Beggar continent, and he had to carry her. Nanahoshi talked about how he carried her on his back. Why? This is the emotionless Orsted the Dragon God that only cares about killing the man god. Why did he nurture and protect and keep her safe and carry her around when she's fatigued through a desert? Why? He must know that she's possibly something for his future. That's all I can think about. Yes, there's going to be some primal desire that's deep within Orsted that's kind of unlocked when he's seen Nanahoshi. This girl is in an unknown location. She's scared. She needs protection. I'll help her out. I'm going to give her this note to be able to help people out. And again, going back to what I've said before, how did he even communicate to Nanahoshi? How did he even communicate to her? That's a massive question mark too. How could he know what she's doing there and how to help her out? It implies that, of course, that Nanahoshi figured out their language very, very quickly in order to be able to communicate to people and do what she needed to do in order to search for her friend. But still, this all leads me to believe, again, because of how off the wall the displacement incident was, how foreign she was to the location, how this has never happened before, that it's very well could be that Orsted was involved with the process of sending Nanahoshi back to here. This chapter, this stuff gets me going. This chapter just gets me going. I met you after that, and you greatly changed the course of Horse's fate. Unlike the other people here, you and I can and are interfering with this loop. And that's true too. Rudius was the same case. Rudius was an anomaly. They never have a boy. Again, we find out later on, he's like, yeah, it was always a stillbirth. Rudius himself is an oddity. And even upon knowing that Rudius is also an isekai, reincarnated there, he doesn't kill Rudius. Rudius is breaking things. Rudius is regularly breaking things, but he still keeps him around. Almost like the idea of him assuming, possibly in his own mind, just not stating it, that maybe Rudius and Nanahoshi are sent here by myself. It seems like the man god wants Rudius dead. That's a pretty damn good sign that Rudius might be here to help me. I might have sent him. Unlike the other people here, you and I can and are interfering with his loop. And that's the other aspect there. I wonder how... I don't know if they've ever mentioned
what Nanahoshi's destiny is. Like, does he have a strong destiny? I would assume she does, based on the idea that I think might be a good example with this teleportation right here, that she might have a very, very, very strong destiny, which has always kind of question marked me. I've always wondered why the man god never goes after Nanahoshi. We've never heard him talk about Nanahoshi? Question mark? Huh. I wonder. I don't think the man gods ever talked about Nanahoshi or ever threatened Nanahoshi. I don't think Nanahoshi's ever mentioned the man god coming after her or talking to her. I mean, the possibility is that because Rudeus can be pulled to the man god, because he has mana, and because he's of this world, whereas he can't interfere with Nanahoshi specifically. And that might be the same case the other guy, Shinohara, whatever his name is. That could be the same for him. If he has his body in this world, the man god can't go after him. But I mean, that's a curious question mark. Why hasn't the man god ever gone after Nanahoshi? Curious. It could be because the moment that she arrived, Orsted immediately came there, thus he never seen Nanahoshi. Plus, he's always been focused on Rudeus. And that might be their plan. That might have been actually their plan in sending Nanahoshi back there, is that he'll be preoccupied with Rudeus, that he'll never really care for Nanahoshi, or possibly never see Nanahoshi as a threat. Specifically, the man god will never see Nanahoshi as a threat. I mean, she has no mana. She can't do anything. Why even bother with her? But he has to be seeing... The man god has to know that Nanahoshi is an isekai too. He has to know that she is special in some way. It's just why has he never taken action against her? That's the massive question mark there. And I'm not sure that I've ever really kind of considered that. Now, of course, Rudeus is the major threat for the man god because I think the man god assumes that Rudeus is responsible for his death because, again, his family's there. Your descendants are there at my death. And so he might just assume that Nanahoshi is just some sort of casualty that was brought in with the whole situation. Now, I've always had the theory that the man god created the displacement incident, but he's never specifically said that, I don't think. I don't think he's ever mentioned, I caused that. And I think at this point he would have mentioned it. But again, once everything was revealed and all that stuff kind of went downhill for Rudeus with his experience with the man god, it's not like they had a conversation about it. It's like there was a necessity to have that conversation. But very curious. I would have to go back. I don't know that the man god's ever mentioned her before. That's very curious. Huh. And you would think that that would be fresh on his mind because of how much Orsted has done with Nanahoshi. And again, that could just be specifically that he never sees it. He could never see when Orsted's traveling around with Nanahoshi. They're never in his vision. He can't see him. Very curious. Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Orsted was stuck in these loops, so he could defeat the man god. Rudeus had no idea which of the two would come out on top. But for argument's sake, let's assume the losing side found some way to alter the past. If they were to hypothesize that they sent Nanahoshi and Rudeus as strategic moves to skip the scales so they could achieve victory. So they could skip the scales. I don't know. I've never heard the term skip the scales. I've heard tip the scales, but I've never heard skip the scales. Damn it, 7 C's. Damn it, 7 C's. Strategic move to skip the scales. So stupid. 7 C's. Never fails to impress. Tip the scales so they can achieve victory. Then, which one lost originally? I mean, the assumption's always going to be Orsted. The assumption's always going to be Orsted because he would need to do this. I think it's a good point, the idea that why would the man god do it because he was supposed to win? Rudeus reasoned that it had to be Orsted. He was the one still caught up in these loops. That meant that it was a possibility that Orsted of the future had called them there. Now the question mark is, why would Orsted finally this time do it? There's a massive question mark still remaining of why this happened to begin with, because it's never happened before in so many loops. Unless finally Orsted discovers some hidden information that possibly maybe Laplace had discovered about summoning from another world, or possibly breaking the loops with that. There has to be something that changed everything. I have my theories we'll get into, but something has to kind of throw a wrench in the whole situation. Something has to change things a lot. But it's not Orsted. He couldn't do something like this. She had a point. Orsted's intention was to win without making any changes to the past. Even if he were to make alterations to the past, he'd be more likely to choose a period further back in history. I don't understand this whole train of thought. I can't understand. I can't understand. She has a point. Orsted's intention was to win without making changes to the past. When has he ever said that? When has he ever said that he would not want to make changes? Now, I can understand not wanting to make changes before the time period that he's in. I can understand that. But not making changes to the past that he's currently in? Why not? I don't think he's ever said that, unless I'm forgetting. Even if he made alterations to the past, he'd be more likely to choose a period further back in history. I don't see that. Because if you make too many... Now, I guess I can see that because there's a lot of things before he came around with like the war and everything like that, that he could utilize something from there. Maybe a person, an equipment, an item, a weapon, something that he can use back there. I think mostly a person. Probably everything around Laplace would probably be a significant part of that whole thing. For instance, the Second Great Human-Demon War, when Laplace was split in two. Rudius brings it up. It's probably why it was planning in my head. Sometimes that happens. But yeah, Laplace being split, I think, is a significant part of it. It was also possible that Orsted, who'd experienced many more loops, would interfere with a version of himself in the past loop. I could see that. If he himself sends himself back or something like that, and there's two of him, that would break some stuff. But Rudius couldn't think of a reason why he'd bother to do that. The Man God couldn't either. As Orsted said himself, the Man God was already supposed to win this loop. It's a time thing. Again, this is why I hate time stuff. This is why I really hate time stuff. It's all a matter of when. Because yes, the Man God could send them back in order to undo what is currently... Because at the moment that Rudius showed up, that's when he started seeing that he was going to die. He's seen Rudius' descendants. That changed everything. But what's to say that he didn't then thus send them to break things after the fact? Send Nanahoshi back to undo what Rudius is currently doing to kill him. Time sucks. Time sucks. I hate it. Orsted had never known about the existence of Geese until now. Thus he thought victory was close at hand. I'm assuming that means Geese is being a disciple of the Man God. He obviously knew that Geese existed. He had no way of knowing that he would stumble over a seemingly insignificant pebble, if not for their presence in this loop. His defeat would have been assured already. That was further proof that the Man God had no incentive to change the past. Now, I want to bring up something very important here that it's odd that Rudius doesn't bring up. Orsted sort of played it out as if he was ready. Orsted almost played it out as if he had finally figured it out, thus giving it more credit to the idea that the Man God is behind all this. What happened when Rudius finally, with everything that happened with Pax, that was the core part. After everything that happened with Pax, it was sort of revealed at that point that Orsted was going to win this loop. If Rudius never showed up and everything played out like it should have, Orsted never had to fight Rudius, the displacement incident never happened, he would have put everything into play, and most importantly, Pax would have gone to becoming a ruler that would eventually give it up, and it would eventually lead to somebody being born in that nation that would be Laplace. Now he doesn't know. Now everything's broken. Now the location of Laplace is now broken for him, and it's going to be too late that he'll find out where Laplace is, and thus he will be older, he will no longer be a child that he can just kill in the crib, and thus he lost that key. It sort of played out as if Rudius failing to save Pax led to the loss of this entire loop. Orsted gave up. That was my last key. I knew exactly where he was going to be. It implies the idea that his previous loop, he finally figured out where Laplace would be born, and thus he could get to him before he gets too old. And thus, he's going to have to expend a lot of mana to defeat him now, and thus it's all over. What if that means that in this loop, he would have found Laplace when he was still an infant, take him out, get the key, and get the Man God fully charged up, and he would have won. Thus, the Man God sent somebody back to mess up this entire loop, mess it up completely. That gives it more credit to the Man God, that he's involved. Then he would do this, and why? That's the question, isn't it? I have to preface what I'm about to say next by admitting that this is only conjecture on my part, but she tapped the book again, pointing to a name written on the page. Shinohara Akito. Immediately below that name was Kuroki Seiji, but she had crossed it out, putting yet another name beside it. Rudius Grey Rat. Yesterday, when I learned your true identity, I remember something. When the accident happened, Aki, Shinohara that is, wrapped his arms around me, You saved Kuroki Seiji, so he was outside the truck's path. I suspect he probably wasn't sent here. It was only 3 of us that was hit in the collision. The 2 of us are here together right now. The last remaining person is nowhere to be found. Finally, volume 23, we finally get in the novel series at least a theory that Seiji is still alive in the previous world. Thank you, anime adaptation. This is something spoiled in episode 2 of the anime, and it's finally being revealed right here in volume 23. Obviously not significant enough, but it's still like one of those question marks. Like, I had this thing when I was reading through, for those that have joined for Mushoku Monday, you know this, as we were reading through the novel series, eventually coming up to these points where it's bringing up the other 2 possibilities of isekais with Nanahoshi, I already knew, based on the anime, that one of them is still alive. That one of them is still back in the other world, because they showed in the anime some kid, one of the students, sitting in the back of an ambulance. He's just chilling there. Finally revealing it right here. Again, that she just assumes. You pulled him out of the way of it, so he wasn't involved. She doesn't know entirely. She doesn't 100% know. I mean, she's crossing it out. She's getting rid of that option there. But it's interesting right here that she's acknowledging that she's suddenly remembering. This sort of implies that, based on him mentioning that he was there, she remembered that fat guy. That fatso. It kind of implies here that before, she just had 3 names here. Herself, Shinohara, and Seiji. And then when he brought that up and she remembered fatso, she crossed out Seiji and put Rudius there. Because she recalled, oh, that's right, some guy showed up and pulled him out of the way. Kind of implying that because of everything that happened, by the time she finally started writing this stuff down, she completely forgot that somebody was there and pulled Seiji out of the way. There's also another side of me that kind of gets a little bit crazy in the idea of, I wonder if this is alternate timelines in the other world too. There we're getting crazy. But it's not out of the realm of possibilities. It's not out of the realm of possibilities this is getting crazy. I don't even know if I want to go down this. I almost don't even want to start thinking about this because it makes things way too complicated. What is the possibility that there's alternate, like there's loops over here with Orsted? What is the possibility there's not loops over there with our world? And the idea of what if there is a reality, or what if Nanahoshi was pulled from a world where Rudius was not there to pull Seiji out of the way? And thus, in her mind, she just recalled, I was standing there with Seiji and Shinohara, and we got hit by a truck. But now Rudius bringing up the idea that, no, I was there, I was, oh, that fact. Maybe him bringing it up suddenly kind of melds their timelines together, and she suddenly starts seeing that there was a guy there that was never there to begin with. And her, again, I don't want to, stop, Andrew, stop. Just put it in that box, close the box. We're not touching that no more. Just push it over there. I don't want to see it no more. I don't even want to go down that route. We're not going down that route. Anyways. But yeah, very interesting here, kind of noting the idea. And again, this kind of plays into what she said before, the idea of kind of being a little happy about how Rudius turned out. Like this idea that, yeah, that technically that fatso, that guy, which now I know is Rudius, he was trying to help us. He was trying to help us right here. It's kind of cool. So she's acknowledging that Seiji is probably not sent here. And that only leaves 3 people. 2 of them are here. Obviously, Rudius, herself. But where's Shinohara? Still that one last person. He was embracing me. He wrapped his arms around her. He has to have come over there. You appeared in this world 10 years before I did. I have to think that means that 3 of us were sent to different time periods here. Or summoned at different times. That's my question mark there. Reese corrected in thought that he was reincarnated, not sent. But he figured that didn't make a big difference. I think that makes a big difference. Reese right here is saying that he's thinking, or saying that Reese is thinking, you know, I don't really want to bring this up because it's not that important, but technically I was reincarnated. I wasn't sent here like you were. Your body was sent here or brought here. I came here as just my soul, and I was reborn in here. He says that's not important, but I think that's actually important. Now, she knows, and this kind of gets into what I was sort of frustrated with Rudius back when she made that hypothesis. And it makes sense. Again, dude was not in hypothesis mode. He did not care about what she was talking about. All he cared about was the now. She's talking about in the future. She's talking about in the past. She's talking about all this other stuff. I don't care. Man God's after me. I need to finish this now. Tell me about Orsted. But technically, because he's been keeping this secret for so long, and he could have brought this up before then, way back when they first met, he was too busy thinking about how he didn't want her to know that he was that fat guy, that he never gave her the information that would probably have helped her hypothesize this a long time ago. There's so much info here that's very important for what she's trying to figure out. Something really big, something bigger than himself that's going to be important at some point. And it is important because of everything that plays out with Orsted and the Man God, it's massively important that you need to let her know who the hell you are. The idea of your soul being brought there and being reborn a child rather than two other individuals, one that we know for sure was brought there with her actual body, Shinohara might be the same case. It seems kind of significant and important that only your soul moved into a body of a person and you were reborn in that world. That seems pretty damn significant, Rudius. But now she can start putting together, obviously, now that she knows that he was a chubby boy that was right there at the same time. She already knew that he was reborn and that he was from, Japan, their modern times, but different situations in the same location when they transported. Again, my original idea is that possibility that Shinohara and Nanahoshi was transported with their bodies. Originally, that was the original intent. And that Rudius, because he died at that same moment, his soul just kind of got stuck in the flow. This tunnel was created where they were pulling those two bodies through, and he just happened to die at that time, and his spirit's coming up, and he gets sucked in there. But it kind of leads me to believe that in the end, I think he was the original intention. There's a theory that I have is that he was the original intention, and the other two just got brought in the situation because of their proximity to him at the time that he was brought. And if he came here before I did, then there would be nothing off if Shinohara came here at an even later date, much, much further into the future, where he met Orsted. Let's suppose that was the first time anything had ever changed in that Orsted's loop, and that he and Shinohara became companions. However, Orsted realized afterwards that he had no way of defeating the Man God, so he took other steps in order to ensure his victory. This is where things get really weird. I admit, this is where I think me and Nanahoshi, we lose each other. We kind of lose each other. There's a lot of assumptions being made here. But, again, this does explain why suddenly the Man God started seeing his defeat. This would be the moment right here. If Orsted becomes friends with Shinohara and they start pulling something together, that would be the moment that the past self Man God would start to see that he's losing. Because originally, he was going to win. If this theory is correct, then yes, the Man God was going to win. And the Man God said that too. I was always winning. I was always above Orsted's corpse, and then suddenly not. Thus, someone in the future changing the past, Rudius thought. Wait, you're saying that this has something to do with why the Fatoa region was totally obliterated? Because this Shinohara guy is some kind of esper with super abilities that allows him to change the past? No, nothing like that. It's like, chill, dude. Rudius. Chill. Chill, boy. Down. But I do think that he would have met a number of different people, just as I have. It wouldn't be strange for him to have found someone who could alter the course of history. This is where it gets really convenient. Like, girl, you're going on some crazy conjecture and some crazy hypothesis here. Her voice trailed off as words immediately popped into Reese's head. A+, child. It never occurred to him when he saw Zenoba's superhuman strength, but the blessed child in Millis could see into a person's memories simply by looking into their eyes. It didn't seem terribly far-fetched to assume there could be a blessed child who could alter the past. It's a massive stretch, and it's extremely OP and really crazy. But yes, nothing's off the table at this point. The moment, now you could probably say the moment that he was reincarnated, he died in modern times Japan, being hit by a truck and somehow managed to end up in the body of a child in another world with magic. All possibilities are there. Like, why would you not believe anything at this point? And then, yes, adding to that, your future self coming back in time to talk to you, sitting in your chair and going, "What's up, dude? Here, check out my diary." Anything's possible at that point. We've broken the realms of possibility here. Anything can happen at this point. The idea of somebody messing with the past is already up in the air. Shoot, if Rudius hadn't met his future self, he would have probably lived a miserable life, detailed in the diary. Didn't that mean the past had already changed once already? It didn't feel real to Rudius that such a thing was possible. But on the other hand, he couldn't rule it out. After all, he had somehow reincarnated here, and Nanahoshi had been transported here? Was altering the past so far-fetched in comparison? God, that's another can of worm that kind of opens up there. I never really thought about that. If we're going based on this hypothesis of possibility of somebody sending somebody the past in order to alter the past, in order for possibly Orsted to successfully defeat the man god, what does that mean for the timeline where Rudius failed? This means that, oh my gosh, that is another. I don't know. I'm gonna wait on this one. Did Orsted say that he had any clues about who this person could be? Yes, he did. He said there's a blessed child who can reverse the time of an object. Immediately when I read that, I immediately thought of sort of a vessel for her to go back. It's saying specifically reversing the time of an object. And so that my assumption there would be that if you had something that like got super decayed because it sat around for too long, like a book has been sitting around for too long, and over time oxidation and bugs or whatever is affecting it, the possibility of reversing the time on it so it becomes brand new again. That, or maybe an apple. Maybe an apple itself, reversing time on it so that it becomes fresh again. But yeah, you would have to do something that they're going to talk about in a minute here, doing something to sort of enhance it in some way. But my mind immediately went to the idea that if this is true, what they could be talking about here is possibly putting her inside of an object or a magical implement, a magic item, an orb. That orb that we seen, that Saros was pointing out, that was sitting above before the displacement incident. Could that be sort of a capsule, an object, a magical implement that she was put inside of, and then they used their power on that with some enhancements to send it back in time so that it was always there? That it basically creates this concept that this orb always existed above the skies of that region, because this blessed child altered the history of that item to send it all the way back there. Crazy. That wasn't what Rudius had in mind, but it fit with Nanahoshi's theory about the blessed child. However, he also said that blessed child's fate was much weaker than anyone else's, that they died without ever being able to do anything. And you think Shinohara Akito stepped in and saved them? Rudius threw out a guess. It felt like the puzzle pieces that she had given him were starting to click. Here's where we get crazy. This is where we get crazy. This Shinohara guy would have met the blessed child as well as Orsted. They could infer then they had somehow developed a magical implement, which allowed them to extend the parameters of the blessed child's power. That would make the most sense, given it aligned with their own experiences. Nanahoshi had collaborated with Petagus to create an even more powerful teleportation apparatus. Likewise, Rudius had met Cliff and Zenoba, and they created the magic armor. They could have assumed that with the aid of the magical implement, they'd managed to alter the past. I think this is sort of tipping the hand. I know what Refugion's doing right here, but I think this is sort of tipping the hand. Rudius is saying, I mean, I can see that happening because I came here and I met Zenoba and Cliff and we started making stuff too, so I can see Shinohara doing that. Or did you do that, Rudius? This has already given me into the mindset that I think Rudius was there. I think Rudius was the original summon. And at some point, he, in the future, summoned Shinohara and Nanahoshi and needed them for this whole process, brought them back into time, had them start to work on stuff that he's going to need in the future. Because Rudius would probably have the means and capability of working with that blessed child in Orsted in order to create a magical implement that they can send back in time. That through his research with Cliff and Zenoba and the magic armor and all this stuff, that they could all work together. Now, the thing that breaks all that stuff is that Nanahoshi is what sort of triggered them to go further with this stuff. That originally, if you took Nanahoshi out of the picture, there's a possibility that Rudius would still have found that house, still have met Sylphie, still have created... No, because she's before them with the displacement incident. Would Rudius have met them, started to work on the magic armor without the happenings of the displacement incident? It could still be. It could still be. Rudius being in that world could still have created the magic armor or at least worked on magic circles and everything with possibly Cliff and Zenoba. Could their destinies and fates have brought them together still, even without the displacement incident and the existence of Nanahoshi there? Again, that's why I hate time. This is why I hate time so freaking much. I know. I still think that I think Rudius is probably the OG. I still think that Rudius is possibly the OG. And then he brought the other two here. Rudius just doesn't know yet because that time, it still has to happen. But no, what Rudius is kind of putting together here is that the Shinohara guy would have met the blessed child as well as Orsted. So his idea here is that Shinohara came here first. And this is where it kind of breaks for me. I don't quite follow what Rudeus is doing here. Shinohara guy comes here. He's the first one here. In the future, or at least we're starting from there. And the idea is that I think they're kind of implying the idea that they all came here, but Shinohara, we're going to start the story off with him. The book opens up chapter 1. Shinohara is transported to another world. He's hanging out with a girlfriend. They're having a little argument. He's like, dang, I gotta calm this girl down because I know I was looking for a little bit tonight, you know. Gosh, gotta chill her out. And then boop, boop, Abanayo, and then get hit by the truck, teleports. Shinohara appears in this world. I'm guessing at that point, Orsted kind of comes across him too. Like, hey, whoa, what are you doing here? Oh, I'm Shinohara. I'm sorry. What happened here? Doesn't understand each other. Probably figure out each other eventually. Orsted did that for Nanahoshi. Probably help him out too. But they're implying here that they together met with a blessed child and somehow saved them. Like their destiny was super weak. They saved that person. And it's kind of implying the idea that Shinohara himself probably realized that point, or at least proposed to Orsted, hey, you're going to lose this man god guy you're talking about? How about messing with the past to see if you can somehow stop this from happening? And then Orsted's like, well, the only thing I can really think about that kind of would affect time itself would be this blessed child, but they're super weak. All right, let's go save them. If their destiny's weak, then let's just protect them. And then possibly we can utilize them. And then after that, they would have gone around, figured out the whole magical implement thing, figured out a way of extending its parameters for the blessed child, put this super, enhancing magnification thing on his head, and then suddenly it just makes the power super more powerful. I can kind of follow that stuff, but it's the later stuff that kind of starts to lose me. None of that answered the real question, so Brius asked, what's that got to do with the teleportation failing? I was hoping you would ask that. And Nanahoshi turned to the next page, where the headline was, My Future, Assuming I'm Unable to Return Home. I thought to myself, wouldn't he have searched for me, just as I've searched for him? Well, this again is only supposition on my part, but what if the reason I can't return home in the present is because I return home with Shinohara Akito in the future? Or rather, what if there's a stipulation to me being able to return? Like, I have to meet some condition, or fulfill some purpose before I can leave. Maybe both are true, even. This is where it starts to kind of lose me. But no, getting into this specific part right here. She already had this conclusion before. She talked about this with Rudeus. And again, he didn't want to listen. And she was probably getting to this point at some point. The idea that I don't think I can leave for a reason. This book tells me I fail even though I had everything together, which makes me believe that if I gave up, then that means that it's impossible. And if what you're telling me is true, it's possible that I have to fulfill something. And at the time, it was really her kind of realizing that she and Rudeus are messing with the current timeline, and that Man God did not like Rudeus being there. That the two of them being there is causing a problem for this guy known as the Man God. That seems kind of significant, Rudeus. And if I failed in that future diary and I gave up, then that means something's keeping me from being successful. So she kind of already had this conclusion, but maybe it was kind of more solidifying for her over time that she kind of thought about this. What if the reason I can't return home in the present is because I return home with Shinohara Akito? That's where we're getting into that kind of, man, that's a massive assumption there. Or what if I have to meet some kind of condition, some role that she's supposed to fulfill, creating a teleportation thing for him to get back with? So the basic gist was that, for some reason or another, this Shinohara guy was summoned here into what would be their future. One thing or another happened, and he became companions with Orsted, and the two worked together. They learned that, as things stood, they couldn't beat the Man God. When he tried to look back to the root of the problem, the cause was in their past. So they found a way to extend the range of the blessed child's ability to alter the past. That's when Rudeus was initially summoned here. I don't know how Rudeus comes to that conclusion from what she says, but Rudeus is coming to this conclusion. Now, this could just be Rudeus himself trying to hypothesize here, but that's really, really weird. It seems way too out of nowhere to be placed right there in a random thought process for Rudeus. He's saying the gist of it is that Shinohara was summoned here. That's it. Shinohara was summoned here to the future. Now, it could also be implying the idea that they all three were summoned here. It's just we're going to start the story from there again. But it's saying specifically Shinohara was summoned here into what would be their future. He met Orsted. They realized that they weren't going to beat Man God, so I'm guessing Shinohara became good friends with Orsted and immediately became part of Orsted Corporation. Like, immediately he just gets sold on Orsted. I got to help this Orsted guy kill this Man God. Okay, I don't know why that would play out that way, but it's playing out that way. But again, they could have just been talking, and Orsted's like, yeah, I've been trying to beat this guy. It's not going to work out. Sorry, dude, that you just got here. Hey, sorry, Shinohara, you just got in this world, but it's about to get reset. And Shinohara's like, I don't really like the idea of it getting reset. What happens to me? I don't know. Probably get deleted. I don't know. So they figured at this point, we're running out of time, and that could be it. That could specifically be it. That Shinohara realized that if he doesn't fix this issue now, we disappear. Rudius even mentioned that idea. I don't like the idea that if you fail, it's just game over. What happens to me? I mean, that's a good question mark. Does everybody reset with the reset? And if that's the case, would Rudius exist in the next loop? That if it goes on, would he just be deleted if Orsted were to suddenly reset? It's a question mark. And that's probably what Shinohara might have seen. So he's desperate, like, crap, I might get erased if I don't finish this before this Orsted guy has to reset. Let's mess with the past. Let's mess with this current loop because I don't want to disappear. So they get with this blessed child, and they're like, okay, let's send blessed child powers towards the past. And they alter something. Now, there's two things that could be happening here. In knowing that the other two, could he have figured out somehow that the other two of them that were in that location, the two of them were sent to different time periods. And he could possibly be working with the blessed child with this magical implement, possibly to magnify it, to alter when they're placed in the past. Question mark. That's another theory there as well. I can see that as well. Maybe the orb appearing in the displacement incident was them trying to alter when she's going to appear in this world and push it back a little further so she's earlier in the time frame of she could have possibly been appearing in their world at a time outside of when Orsted's even there. And they may have needed to push her to be in that particular time period right there. All right, drop her. Boom, displacement incident. Crap. All right, not that. Just don't look at it. Everything's working out fine. Okay. That could be as well. But it's very interesting that Rudius says in his mind, or thinks, that's when I was initially summoned here. He's saying when they altered the past, Rudius was summoned there. That's weird. Except the moment he appeared, the man god foresaw his own death at the hands of Rudius' descendants. With their help, Shinohara and Orsted were able to finally take him down. However, there was a problem. Shinohara had no way of returning to his world. Thus, he once again used the Blessed Child's power. This time, he summoned Nanahoshi to the past. What? What? We're going, what? That's a stretch. I'm sorry. That's a stretch. Knowing how fiercely she would want to return home, her passion for going back spurred her to invent better teleportation circles. I don't see this. I'm sorry. This is a stretch. If this is what happens, this is a massive stretch. I don't see this. There's a way that I can explain this, but that's a massive stretch. Oh, crap. Hey, this Vanguard guy's bad, huh? All right, let's alter the past and we'll set things up. Cool, we beat him. All right, yeah, beat him. High five, Orsted. Okay, high five. Crap, I'm stuck here. How do I get back? Well, you can, I don't know. Let's alter the past again and see if we can figure out how to teleport you back home. I know. My girlfriend, she's a smart girl. I know a high schooler. I know a schoolgirl that's super freaking smart. This girl, she straight A's, dude. She's so good at math in modern times schooling systems, not even in college. She's super smart. She'll figure it out. Let's summon her and send her back there and force her to suffer in this world where she's going to be dying and she's going to be desperate to get back home and she's going to be stuck in her young body. That way she could never grow up and never have a life. Let's make her suffer to hell and back in the past until she gets so freaking off that she doesn't hate. She's like, I want to get the out of this world. This world sucks. Why did I ever get sent to this world? I want to go home. She's going to be suffering so much in this godforsaken world that she's going to be desperate to get the hell out of here. But make sure her body doesn't change. That way she can still make it here and she's still alive. I don't want her to grow old and die. I don't want some old hag to be chasing after me. Let's summon her in this world to a specific time period so that she can advance teleportation technology. What? Now, the only way that makes sense is they were specifically saying at some point that that summoning magic was a forbidden art. They sort of imply the idea that there's there's these rules that were set upon the world itself that summoning magic you couldn't do. And so it could be, yes, let's bring somebody else into the picture that's not of this world, that is not under the laws of the world itself. They did imply that. And I think I was theorizing at that point that it was something that only Rudius and Nanahoshi would be able to do. So yeah, I can see why, possibly, but that's a stretch. To bring a schoolgirl over the world and assume that she's going to somehow create teleportation magic. Now, a lot of that could be the idea that, again, Orsted might know that. Orsted might have an inkling that this is what's going on. It would be crazy if at some point they reveal that Orsted knows about the future and knows about what's going on. Again, he's never implied that. He's never said that he can do that. But I wonder if somehow his mind is connected to his future self, or can connect to his future self and see that. This chapter, dude. Are we ever going to finish this chapter? I'm so glad I'm so glad I didn't keep this for the previous Mushoku Monday. As much as that one guy wants to get mad about it all goes together perfectly. We'll do it at my pace. We're doing it at my pace. This chapter is way too big. There's too much to talk about here. Where was I at? I had like 3 things in my mind, and I went down the rabbit hole one of them, and I completely forgot the other ones. That was when Rudius was initially summoned here, except the moment he appeared, the man god foresaw his own death in the hands of Rudius' descendants. With their help, Shinohara and Orsted were able to finally take him down. However, there was one problem. Shinohara had no way of returning to his world. Thus, he once again used the Blessed Child's powers. This time, he summoned Nanahoshi. That's where it's specifically saying he summoned Nanahoshi to the past. Knowing how fiercely she would return home, her passion for going back spurred her to invent a better teleportation circle. Here it is. And this goes to one of my theories I've had. I think Nanahoshi appeared in the future with Shinohara. Again, she's even saying in this chapter, she's specifically saying he grabbed onto me. He put his arms around me. He was protecting her, shielding her, grabbing her. Then they were teleported together. I don't think they appeared separate. I think it's going to be as simple as truck comes, Rudius grabs that Seiji, pulls him off to the side, smashed by that truck, crushed, dead. It comes, and she even says, actually, that they were in the collision. So it kind of specifies that they got hit. By the way, she got her body. So the assumption is that both her and Shinohara, their bodies were transported to another world. And I believe that they, yes, grouped up with Orsted. And again, I still think that they at that point realized we got to stop this in this loop of Orsted because we might not appear again. This might be the end of us. And so they figured out how to stop this. They put all this stuff together. And I think that part of that conversation was, but we have to figure out how to get out of here. We need more time. Specifically, we need more time. And it could be that at the time that they were figuring out how to take down the man god, Nanahoshi was trying to figure out how to do teleportation. And at that point, they realized, hey, I can actually figure this out. And Shinohara's like, but we don't have much time. We're running out of time. Okay, send me to the past. That's when Nanahoshi, I believe, at that point said, send me to the past. So at that point, they sent her back. She can get more time to figure out how to make teleportation, to get them home. And I think during the process of her being sent back into time, and she was in that magical implement, and they probably figured this out beforehand too. She probably, even though she was inside of an implement, that this orb that they seen, and being sent back in time, I bet even still, she lost her memories. It reset her. It rewound her time. And that could have been an age thing too. She could have been aging in the future, but then it was sent back in time. But that could be why she never ages. My gosh. I hate this crap so freaking much. Oh god. It could be the reason why she doesn't age is because she wasn't that old in the future. And thus, if she's sent back in time, in order for the time to be complete and make sense to the time, and she is and she's in time until the future, she has to be the same age as she was then before they sent her back in the time. Thus, she was never old. She was still, oh my god. So basically, it reset her memories of this world. So that's why she never remembers anything. But she was sent back in time, and she can't age because she has to go back to 0. She has to reach 0 point again. And 0 point, she's not old. That actually explains why she never ages. There has never been an explanation why she never ages. Never. Ever. That could be it. Huh. That aspect right there solidifies in my brain that she is from the future. That she was sent back from the point that Shinohara is at. Huh. Wow. This stuff's crazy, dude. I hate this chapter. I'm never gonna finish this chapter. It's gonna be the longest Mushoku Monday ever, and it's for a single chapter. For that one guy that hates my single chapter coverage. Don't care. Don't care. Where am I at right here? Except the moment he appeared, the man god foresaw his own death at the hands of Rias' descendants. With their help, Shinohara, Orsted were able to finally take him down. And again, I think that makes sense to him kind of coming to that conclusion that was the point in which Rudius was initially summoned here. Is that, yes, Shinohara with Orsted, with this blessed child, may have specifically chose to bring somebody to be born in the world, so they're outside the laws of the world itself, and will thus cause a friction within the world and bring about the man god's death. And again, that could be strictly the idea that Orsted says, we need somebody to birth children in this world who will become my allies, that will be able to work around the destiny and work around these restrictions and will not be afraid of me. Specifically, will not be afraid of me. And so having Rudius be born in this world rather than be moved in this world is the break, and will allow him to grow up, have children, and those children will eventually be at his side when he goes and fights the man god. And at the same time, again, sending Nanahoshi back here so that she can work on making teleportation so they can get the hell out of there afterwards. The question mark is, why Rudius? Is that specifically the idea that they have one of those trails they were talking about with this whole process of trying to send Nanahoshi back? Did they have a sort of trail where there's something there that could have been read that tells him exactly where he came from? And he's like, there's a guy that was there. I think he's dead. Let's just grab his soul. That poor dude. Let's just bring it over. He helps Seiji. Hey, let's bring him over here. See if he can help us out. He's dead anyways. Kind of feel bad for the guy. Let's have him come over. But the problem still remains, who summoned Shinohara? I think it could come just down to the idea that Orsted himself discovered, again, some ruins of Laplace, and is like, I gotta figure this crap out. And he discovers some ruins of Laplace that says about how to summon from another world, and he just happened to get Shinohara and Nanahoshi. Ruiz could only guess when they summoned her. Perhaps they were a bit too reckless in how they altered the past, thus destroying the Fatoa region. The thought of that made Ruiz furious with this Shinohara guy. If everything Nanahoshi supposed was true, he had destroyed that land and countless lives out of his own selfishness. I wonder, I mean, there could be a theory here that it was unintentional. Like, let's drive over here, and oh crap, that was, ouch. Or it could be the idea that, yes, again, everything that you have that payment. You have to restore that energy. It has to go back. Of course, this is all speculation. Still, Ruiz couldn't blame the guy, could he? Perhaps Shinohara was out of options. Again, that makes me believe that he believed that once Orsted reset, he's gone. Since he's not part of this world, this timeline, he's gone. That he had no other choice than to alter the past like that. And again, if they're using this blessed child, they probably have no clue what's going to happen. They could have theories about what will happen when they send Nanahoshi back, but they could have no idea. Or maybe there was no way of knowing how dire the repercussions would be. The most terrifying possibility was that the circumstances were so drastic that he made the call in spite of the cost. Again, if you think it's all over at that point, I don't see why not. Ruiz could relate to that. Since coming here, he also made many precious connections to other people. His wives, children, and even his little sisters. He was willing to become Orsted's underling just to protect them. Thankfully, Orsted turned out to be a surprisingly good guy. What if he had been rotten? What if he had ordered him to carry out heinous acts? Ruiz knew in his head he would have followed his commands regardless. He would do anything to protect his family. Again, he was going after Orsted, and Orsted seemed like a cool dude. And again, he's technically gone. He went to the Sharon and helped out Zenoba, took out so many people. Maybe Shinohara and Rudius were no different on that front. Everyone has something that was precious to them. I get it. So then, Nanahoshi, let's assume that all of your suppositions are correct. What are you going to do? Good question. She paused for a moment. Assuming that the conditions is for me to make something before I can return home, I think I've already fulfilled my role. I created the teleportation apparatus. I have no intentions of creating anything else. If that was Nanahoshi's role, Rudius wondered what his role was. Creating descendants. Obviously, creating descendants. To lead Orsted to victory? Maybe everything hinged on killing Geese. He probably thought that due to it weighing on his mind. Geese might not be the only hidden disciple. Having said that, the fact that I couldn't go home must mean there's something else left for me to do. Right. And while I realize this is hopeful thinking on my part, I wonder if my final task is to send Shinohara, in the future, back home. Wait, what? She lost him there. I mean, that has to be it, right? I made the apparatus, but if he doesn't know how to use it, then he won't be able to return home. I mean, the immediate question mark that popped in my head right there, I mean, Rudy just brings it up right here, is like, but how is he going to have the mana for it? Like, how is he going to have the mana for it? I mean, it's a decent stretch. And again, it matches up to my idea of why she doesn't age, because she has to reach that point being the same age. Otherwise, it's not consistent with her in the future. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, how's he going to have that much mana? And it could be that Shinohara himself, maybe he was actually blessed when he arrived in this world. If he wasn't born in this world, was a possibility that he was blessed with that energy. Or, and this goes to a bigger theory here, Laplace is helping him. What are the chances that Laplace is helping them? What if Laplace is there with Shinohara helping him out? And thus, he will be the one that will supply the mana. Maybe they figured out how to make Laplace become merge his selves back together. And thus, he's kind of more sane in the mind. And yes, he's still going to be required in order to get to the man god. But what if he's there helping them out? And he's using his massive mana supply in order to send them back and to summon people. That could be the break in why they would need Rudius there in order to summon Shinohara and Nanahoshi. What if it was Laplace himself working with Orsted, summons them to that world, and the reason why Rudius right here is not able to supply the mana to send Nanahoshi home is because they're using the Blessed Child in pairing with Laplace in order to stop Rudius's mana. If Rudius has this, and we've never really gotten to this detailed, so we don't know if it's true or not, there's a possibility that everybody with an aspect of Laplace, that Laplace himself is able to control the aspect. So if Rudius is using a massive mana supply in order to send Nanahoshi, in the future, with them together, is able to send Laplace's power to control his own power back to stop Rudius. He's cutting off his mana supply. He's like, stop. That's my aspect. And you're not going to use that mana supply. It's a possibility. It's a possibility. It goes in my theory in the idea of Laplace being a lot more involved in the future than just being killed. And that's it. This chapter, dude. But again, this makes sense, the idea that in order to not create sort of a paradox right here, she's got to send him back. Assuming that Shinohara had some kind of mana tank like Rudius in the future to help, just having the installation itself wouldn't be enough to actually get to work. There was a good chance that Pedagogus won't be alive anymore by then. Rudius could see what she was getting at. But the whole hypothetical scenario seemed a little too neat. The problem could be easily solved by Nanahoshi pinning and leaving a manual he could use. There's nothing neat about this. Rudius, there's nothing neat about this. Yeah, your play-out scenario, I guess, could technically be seen as kind of neat. Everything kind of falling into play, but it's a mess. It's a mess, dude. Or maybe I'm already in the future. Bingo. She's probably there just before being sent or something. She couldn't return home because it would create a time paradox. If she returned now, her future self wouldn't be able to exist. Now, again, to the idea of the paradox itself could again play into the idea that she came here first and then lived here all the way until the end, and then he's able to transport. But she can't leave until then. So that something was sent back in the past to get her kind of fired up in order to create this teleportation. This idea right here, this mindset right here, does play into the idea that her first moments here was when she got summoned there. She couldn't return home because it would create a time paradox. If she returned now, her future self wouldn't be able to exist. And if her future self helped perpetuate the change in the past, then her future self's actions and existence would take priority over whatever else the past self attempted to do. That would explain why the teleportation installation just abruptly ceased working with no real cause or reason. Again, I can see that. But at the rate things are going, I won't live another 80 years to see that future. I have this disease I am dealing with after all. Which this all makes me believe that this has to play out. This whole situation has to play out, and that they found the same resolve. Or they could have found a cure, but I would probably assume it's just the idea of meeting Pedagogus and having the ability to stop herself. Her eyes fixed on the corner of the room as she spoke. Reese had a bad habit of letting this slip his mind, but her words were a grim reminder that she was afflicted by Dryden syndrome. It was almost like the AIDS of this world. Nanahoshi managed her symptoms by drinking sokas grass daily. There was no telling when this disease might progress to something more unmanageable. The chances of her surviving another 8 more years was quite slim. What are you going to do? Nanahoshi sucked in a breath. I'm going to ask Pedagoose to freeze me in time. She's referring to Pedagoose's spirit, Scarecoat of Time, whose touch was capable of freezing someone in time. If she used Scarecoat's power, she could survive those long years. It wouldn't be indefinite. At some point, Laplace would revive, and Pedagoose would launch a full-scale assault to take him down. He wouldn't have the luxury of wasting precious resources like Scarecoat when that happened. If everything lined up, it would be 80 years from now, 50 at most. Or say we need to take down Laplace as well. If he was going to make it to the Man God, Shinohara would be there to assist in that, which would mean Nanahoshi would wake up at the right point in time. Which this is all kind of making me wonder if Shinohara could have come here by himself, reincarnated into this world, and then assisted Orsted because he wasn't afraid of Orsted. And then at some point realized that he needed a way out, summoned Nanahoshi because, again, she would be outside the laws of the world itself to be able to create the ability to transport them back out. That all seemed to kind of line up as well. But somebody would have to summon to begin with, so that's not outside the realm of possibility for... That doesn't seem like that's a strict rule, because somebody would have to have summoned them to begin with. But that could be the idea of, again, they're only summoning a soul rather than an actual body. Whereas a body itself, to be able to send them back over to the other world, would require... Yeah, I don't know. That's all kind of fuzzy in my brain. I made up my mind, Rudius. I have one last request to make of you. Reese tilted his head. A request, huh? I want you to take some kind of measure to ensure my existence doesn't escape Shinohara Akito's attention. Write about me in a book or erect a monument to me. Whatever works. Also, while I know teleportation circles have been forbidden in this world, I would like you to make them public if possible. Continue to research them. Again, another person wanting to push this stuff public. It keeps being brought up. Is that really necessary? There's no guarantee all the suppositions I've made are correct. In fact, it'd be odd if all of them were. Best assume that 80% of what I said is nothing but fantasy and take out insurance. That way, if everything I've said is wrong, I'll still be able to find a way back home when I wake up. Again, I mean, he brings up here, it's interesting that she still kind of goes, but assume that it might be wrong. If you think that all this is going to play out that easily, it's going to suck when it doesn't. It's going to suck when it doesn't. She had worn away Rudius' skepticism with her rock-solid logic. He wouldn't sweat about being totally accurate, but it made perfect sense. Once again, using perfect reasoning, she was swaying Rudius towards acting as if none of it was certain. Maybe she was wrong, and the magic circle just had some flaw in design. They had reached the highest level of perfection they could imagine at this point in time. But it was perfectly conceivable that there was something still missing, something they wouldn't be able to overcome without a breakthrough. Of course, I still intend to wake several times each year to get an update on the present circumstances. I'm sure things will change while I'm asleep, for lack of a better word, and I may ask you to change tactics at that point. Situations did lead to change. Some new info might refute the premise of her thesis entirely. Besides, he thought as long as he drew breath, he wanted to do whatever he can to see her home. There was nobody else he'd trust with that letter to his family. Gotta bring up the friggin' letter again. That girl's gonna take care of what I want to take care of with my family. Somebody brought up a good point. The idea of them walking up. If no time passed in the previous world, if she suddenly shows up at the brother's doorstep and says, Rias has been taking care of me for the last 10 years, please take this letter, that would look really bad. I just assume at the point that she was just going to leave the letter somewhere. But yes, the idea of her bringing the other letter to ask for help, he'd have to word that very carefully. Don't say you've been taking care of me for the last 10 years when she's like the age that she is. Yeah, we've seen that on the TV screen when they're busted in. We're very aware of that. All right. After the conversation, they carefully scrutinized the teleportation apparatus to be sure there was no issues with it, and made one more attempt to send her back to her world. They confirmed everything was as it should be. There was no issues. Everything went beautifully, but they failed nevertheless. It was as though someone was shutting off Rudy's mana supply to interfere. Again, I think it's Laplace. I think Laplace, with the Blessed Child, is literally cutting him off. Rudy could at least confirm that there was no issues on his end, assuming Pedagoose was being entirely honest. The only guess Rudy could make was that the interference was coming from someone in the future, and he couldn't imagine how it could be the Man God's doing. Whatever the underlying cause, their mission to send Nanahoshi back ended in failure. It was then that Nanahoshi informed Pedagoose of her plan. Rudy thought that he would oppose her decision, but he accepted it quite readily. When she implored him to lend her Scarecoat of Time to put her to deep sleep, there was a momentary flicker of sorrow on his face that smoothed over so quickly it almost made Rudius sad. He's such a tsundere. He doesn't like it. He's like, I think he's going to accept the idea of like, okay, let's chill, but he's like, okay, that's fine, but we're going to still work on the thing. but I think the idea of her wanting to be put into sleep and put to rest takes her out of the picture. It's really going to get into here in a minute, of course, and it's been talked about in the past. He doesn't like this idea of the future messing with the current time. And so her saying that, he's fine with it. He's like, I'm going to still work on it, and she can probably get involved as well. But the moment that she says that she wants to put to sleep, that upsets him because that means that she's not involved anymore. She's given up. Once it was gone, he merely muttered, "If that's what you wish." Rudius figured that she already discussed that possibility with him. Well then, Rudius, Lord Pedagogus, I leave everything in your capable hands. With that, Nanahoshi disappeared to her room. Her plan was to awaken when Scarecoat's mana ran out, which would be about once a month. Considering how estranged they had grown over the past few years, Rudius wasn't gripped with sorrow at the thought of her absence. For now, it was more like a friend moving far away. But he did feel something else, an unease. As Rudius struggled with his own inner turmoil over the outcome, Pedagogus called out to him on his way to leave the floating fortress. "I detest the word fate." That seemed out of nowhere, but Rudius nodded. He didn't want to think that everything they had accomplished was simply someone else's plan. "Me too. It's detestable to think the future clenches its fist around the past. I can scarcely stomach it." Pedagogus shot a spiteful look at the door that Nanahoshi had disappeared through moments earlier. "That belief shows scorn for the past and contempt for the present. I refuse to accept it." For having such a strong opinion on the matter, you sure didn't throw a fit at lending Nanahoshi one of your subordinates. His face hardened as he scrutinized Rudius. "It is my belief that there is something lacking in that circle itself. Nanahoshi seems to have abandoned hope, but I shall not. While she's trapped in a deep sleep, I shall see this magic circle completed. This I swear upon my name as the Armored Dragon King." He's so freaking tsundere. Dude wants to send her home. I think it's both. I think it's like 80-20. 80% of it, I think he just wants to help Nanahoshi. She has entertained him. He has grown to like her. She's a good person. She's super smart. And again, these dragonfolk have been kind of pointed out as being people that just love to research things. They love figuring things out. They like research. They're geeks. Like, they're all geeks. They're all massive geeks. They love just getting into their hobbies and just getting to everything about it. And Nanahoshi is somebody who's showing him new things, showing him really creative things that is totally sparking his inner geekdom. And so now she's giving up. Like, we built this crazy thing. He's like, this is so cool. He's like, this thing is taking up so much space in his floating fortress, but he's like, it's a toy room to him. Like, he's like, look at my new toy. Oh, this is for Nanahoshi. But I like it. It's like the parent buying the kid the toy as an excuse to be able to play with the toy. It's like that. It's literally that. But I think there's a 20% of it that is like, yeah, I think there is an aspect here that he hates how the future controls the current time. And again, it's all in those murals, which again, from my understanding, seems to be all wrote by Laplace, which seems to sort of dictate the future, which seems to be implying, I think the murals at this point are pretty much implying the idea of the path towards the man god, the man god's defeat. And he might not like it even still if it's a sign of what's to come, because in that mural, it says, time is set to do this. This is going to happen. This is all going to play out to have this happen. And he doesn't like it. He doesn't like that his future's already set. It's already foretold. He wants to do what he wants to do. And I'm kind of wondering at this point, I might go back and check out the murals again. I'm wondering at this point if there's any sort of sign in the murals about Nanahoshi. Because at this point, I'm kind of wondering if all this stuff was sort of, they used the Blessed Child to send information back to talk about how this all plays out, to sort of leave something in play. And it could be that Pedagogus read that stuff and followed into it, knowing that it was something that he's going to have to play out. That maybe the murals that are in the floating fortress may never have been there, but they actually applied them to the wall afterwards so that Pedagogus could see it. And Pedagogus could be playing out a lot of that stuff without even thinking about it because it's foretold, and he doesn't like it. Anyways, this freaking chapter. I hate time. A fiery determination shone in his dark eyes. "Unfortunately, I lack the substantial mana pool you possess. Thus, Rudius Greyrat, I shall have you lend me your assistance in this endeavor." "I don't mind helping you. I have a favor to ask, though. Why do you go to such great lengths to support Nanahoshi?" The question seemed to bring Pedagogus back to his senses. His expression shifted, and his eyes unfocused, gazing into the far distance. It was as if he himself didn't know why he was doing this. After a few moments, his brows drew together, indicating that he had some notion as to his own motivations after all. I did like them to note the idea that, like, he's literally asking Rudius, I need you to help me with this endeavor because I don't have that massive mana pool. And Rudius is like, sure. Hello? I guess the idea here is that Rudius isn't going to be there every single day like he was for these tests. He's just going to be probably working on it. He's going to have to do some massive research because it seems like it's all perfect. He's probably going to have to do some research and refigure things out before Rudius can come back in there and they can try it again. This isn't going to be like we're trying a step-by-step process of tests of the same machine. He's probably going to have to alter it a lot. So he's probably not going to need Rudius there all the time to test it. He's probably going to come and visit maybe once a month or something like that. But yeah, my initial thought here is like, no, Rudius, you've already kind of put off the whole thing with Geese because you've been doing this and spending all your mana. You can't help him right now. But yeah, indicating that he had some notion about his own motivations after all. To the past. Our presence is the future. Our past selves brought us here to where we are today, and our current selves will continue to build our future. I desire to enlighten my apprentice by showing her the error of her foolish thinking. That is all. I am only idling my time until Laplace's revival. He's so tsundere. Just say you like Nanahoshi. Shut up and say you like Nanahoshi. But this is important. Okay, at the core, yes, it's going to be what Petagoose is always going to say. I'm just buying time. I just want to be amused. I don't want to get involved with you, Ariel, because I'm focused on Laplace. Okay, now it's entertaining, I'll help you. I don't care. Oh, I gotta go down that stupid freaking meeting you have with all of them. I don't care. Amuse me. Wow, this is crazy. You got a water god up in here and there's crazy stuff happening. I've been amused. He's just looking to be amused. I'm just buying time until Laplace shows up. That's my focus. It's always been my focus, always will be my focus. But at the core here, during that time, she's entertained me and she's shown me things that I like. Because again, these dragon they're like geeks. They're all dorky geeks. But there is a core thing of the hatred for something telling them where we're going. And I'm really curious at what point it's going to finally get into why he hates us so much. Was he manipulated or tricked by one of these murals? I wonder, what if somebody had tricked him into making the wrong decisions? Maybe something that happened in the past was a decision that he made because he read some sort of prophecy or something like that. And it caused the death of somebody that he liked. And that's why he hates his stuff so much. But again, it all comes down to this one core thing about him. To the past, our presence is the future. Our past selves brought us here today, and our current selves will continue to build the future. Nanahoshi, what he's saying right here, Nanahoshi, you have to build that future. You do. Not some future self, not some future thing. You can't build it. The reason why we're here today is because our past self built to here. She thinks it's going to build itself. It's not. Your future presence will not have anything achieved because you were frozen in time. I'm going to show her she's wrong there. I think there's a part of it where he doesn't want to believe that she's in the future. She believes it. Again, he's been listening to everything that Rudius and she has been talking about. He's heard this whole bit. I think he doesn't believe it. I believe he does not believe that there's a Nanahoshi in the future or there's anything happening in the future that is going to be ready and waiting for her. You're wasting your time, girl. Do things now. Don't wait for this future self. You can't build it. You're not going to be able to build it if you're frozen. I'm going to show her she's wrong. I'm going to make that thing work. I'm going to wake her up and I'm going to tell her to get in that damn circle and get out of here. Go home, girl. I did it for you. Don't worry. There's almost a side of me that wants him to actually pull it off. I know it's going to break the time. If what she's saying is true, it's going to break things. But there's almost a side of me that I want Petagoose to win. Like, I almost want him to be like, girl, I got it figured out for you. Get in there and go home. Go home. Petagoose taking care of the girl. Anyways, foolish, huh? Perhaps from his perspective, Nanahoshi looked like a petulant child, sulking because she didn't get her way. Maybe he thought she was under the illusion that if she just went to deep sleep, something might magically change and solve all of her problems for her. He wanted to refute that. That is such a oof statement. That is such a oof statement. Nanahoshi, you failed and you're just giving up. You're just giving up. That she possibly is making up this hypothesis as sort of she's tired. It's almost playing it out as if she's tired. I'm done. I've tried. I've built this massive thing. Rudius told me before it was going to fail, and I didn't want to accept it. And now I have my out. But the problem remains that she doesn't have a choice. She can keep building up this thing, but she's not going to survive long enough. The idea here is that she needs to go to sleep so that later on, Once Laplace is born, she can awaken because Scarecoat's going to be busy and everything. Possibly Petagoose dies. Possibility there. She's not going to have a way of holding herself still in time anymore. And if they hypothesize here that she only has 8 more years, she's going to have 8 years after that point that she's going to be able to survive and hope that everything finishes. Hope that they take down the man god in those 8 years, otherwise she's dead. She has to suspend herself or find a cure. I was thinking of the possibility of having Petagoose, while she's asleep, try to find a cure. Try to find a cure for it. They put this off because they're like, oh, just get the Ch6 grass. That'll alleviate it until we can, figure out the teleportation thing. But now they know they have to wait this long. Finding a cure is probably a good idea right now. Because there's no telling that, at some point here in the next few years, if somebody comes and kills Petagoose or takes down, if they take out Scarecoat, he could just summon him again. Or possibly if Petagoose dies, Rudeus can possibly summon Scarecoat. But no, they imply that he created them. He literally created them. And I don't know, maybe he can show Rudeus how to create Scarecoat. That would be cool as well. But yeah, if something happens to Petagoose, Nanahoshi's kind of dead. Unless they find a cure. They would have to find a cure. And again, they don't know how long she can last with the Ch6 grass. But yeah, it's interesting. All right, I'll help out then. You have my gratitude. No need for that. Rudeus flashed a smile at him, pleased at this little interaction. Where he's like, yes, things are going better. After that whole, thinking my child is Laplace and me suspecting you being a bad guy, I think I'm getting a better relationship with Petagoose now. Nanahoshi probably wouldn't return to Japan in Rudeus' lifetime. However, even if she was never able to go back, at least she had someone to look after her. That warmed Rudeus' heart. He's like, I like that Petagoose is taking care of Nanahoshi. He's like, he wants somebody to take care of her. Thus, Nanahoshi went into a deep and dreamless sleep to await the future. Rudeus was left with an uncomfortable tangle of emotions that would be hard to tease out. Part of him was relieved that they had reached the ending. Another part grieved for the same reason. Like, he liked the idea of going after this kind of research with Nanahoshi. Interesting. Or probably just the end of Nanahoshi's story, which they would probably feel either way if she left or not. He wondered if Nanahoshi would have reached this conclusion, with or without his involvement. Thinking back on it, his future self had never told him what her fate was. He only danced around the topic with a sorrowful look on his face. Rudeus suspected, based on the information he had, that Nanahoshi had never shared her conjecture with him. Perhaps Petagoose later told him that she ended her life, but it was possible that was a front, that she was actually gone into a slumber to await the future, just as she had this time. I wonder about that. Could she come? I could see her totally come to the same conclusion. There's nothing in that future diary that would have changed anything that much. Yes, when he presented the future diary, all it really told her was that she was going to fail. That's all it did. Now, it did give her a deeper sense and information about the man god, but this is information that she could have gotten from Orsted. But that did give her sort of firsthand experience about the man god. Through the diary, she's seen the dialogue and the exchanges that Rudeus had with the man god. Not the full dialogue, but at least a sense of what they were talking about based on what he wrote in that diary. But again, the only thing it really gave to her was the idea that she was going to fail and that she was going to give up. That something told her that it's not possible. She could have come to the same conclusion without that. Because what she'll come to either way, even in the previous timeline, is that she would build up towards teleporting out of there. And then if Rudeus didn't give that information, and then she would have failed, and then she would have possibly come to the conclusion that there's something preventing me, that I have to wait for something. There's a possibility that, again, she knew that Shinohara probably came there too. Maybe you have to wait for Shinohara. Was a possibility because of where Rudeus showed up, that he would show up somewhere else. Now, Rudeus not being there at all, that's a massive question mark. Because that takes out of her mind the possibility of different times that they appear there. Rudeus implants that in her mind. Different times. So could she come to the same conclusion? I think she could. Could she have done as well? I don't know. Because she would, not as fast. She would not be able to put all this together as fast because Rudeus is supplying her a massive amount of mana. I think there's a good chance that if she failed and Petagoose, seeing the state that she was in, there's a good chance that he would have stopped her from taking her own life and put her in suspension. Or possibly she was in the same state that she was when Rudeus had to save her life, where she wasn't eating and she was dying. He could have probably seen her in that state and put Scarecoat on her. That could be it too. That settled it. It was time to head off to the sword god Galfalion. Edison and Rudeus would go together. It was best to keep things simple. It did make him feel a little uneasy to think that they had no backup. But from what he heard, no one in the Sword Sanctum was particularly bright. Taking someone who was an expert at speaking with their fists was the safest option. They should have brought Ghislaine. Not that Ghislaine has like any power there, but I think it would be great to have her go there because she just knows a lot of people there. Again, I'm assuming that Galfalion's not there. There ain't no way that he's there. Again, because if we assume that he met with Geese before now, if that was him in that chapter, he's going off to meet somewhere. There's somewhere they have to be for this certain time period. Now, it could be here. Could be here. That's true too. Which makes me wonder how long they're going to wait if he can regain his mana by then. Before leaving, Rudius needed to give Orsted his regular report. Tell him about Nanahoshi's choice to go with a theory that she had already given him. Rudius made his way past the receptionist, entered the office, and made a proper bow. I have a report to give you, sir.
Very well.
Nanahoshi's attempt to return to her world ended in failure. She believes the cause lies in the future. She has employed the power of Pegasus' subordinate, Scarecrow of Time, to fall into suspended animation.
I see.
Orsted slowly removed his helmet, then pressed his hand to his temple, breathing out a long sigh.
And what did Pegasus say?
He insisted the failure had to do to some inadequacy in the circle itself. He's determined to continue improving it, so that he can see Nanahoshi home.
Is that all?
Pegasus also said that it was absurd for the past to be determined by what takes place in the future.
Of course he did. He would say that.
That's interesting. It's a very interesting conversation. I would assume that Orsted knows because he just literally said he would say that. Why is he asking him? Why is he asking? Why is Orsted interested in what Pegasus thinks of that? Anything else? It's like he's waiting for something else. Something that confirms something. My assumption is that, yes, he's curious what his friend thinks. Again, going back to what seems like a very obvious conclusion to come to, is that through the many loops, there was times where Orsted was a friend of Pegasus. And I would assume at some point he stopped being friends with Pegasus because he knew he's going to have to kill him anyways, and he just doesn't want to get close to him. Or maybe he's seen him die so many times, he just doesn't want, he's numb to it. But this loop's different. I think Orsted right here is curious what Pegasus thinks because he wants to see how Pegasus is holding out. Because he knows that Pegasus is close to Nanahoshi. They're both close to Nanahoshi. She's their friend. And so he probably is curious what Pegasus thinks. But again, I believe it's kind of makes sense here. He's going to want to know it more. And that, yes, he would be upset about the idea of the future messing with things. Oh, yeah, that's right. Pegasus hates that crap. But again, I wonder if it's also an aspect that Pegasus has been fooled by something before. Some sort of message of the future. Man God himself messing with him. I'd be curious. Perhaps it was Rudius' imagination, but his voice was unusually full of emotion. Although his expression is just as implacable, and his tone just as flat as ever.
Now that I've heard about Nanahoshi, what do you plan to do?
I'll give it some more thought, but my present plan is to go meet Sword God Galfalion. As always, I would appreciate as many details as you can provide.
Very well. I have already compiled my knowledge on the man.
He pulled some documents out of his cabinet. He was well prepared as ever. While Rudius appreciated his thoroughness, he also got the feeling the roles were kind of reversed here. Yeah, like, shouldn't I be the informant? Shouldn't I be going out and gathering information and documents and placing it before you to make decisions? Thank you, sir. I will gladly make use of them.
I wrote in here as well, but just for emphasis. Avoid fighting Galfalion.
Yes, sir. While one curtain closed on Nanahoshi's story, another one opened. Rudius' somewhat bizarre break came to an end. It was time to resume battle with Geese. That is chapter 6. I wonder why he says to avoid fighting Galfalion. I would assume he just knows Galfalion would kill him. Because Orsted has fought Gal. Now, this is a curious thing. Orsted has fought both of them. Now, I would assume that Orsted has pretty much fought pretty much everybody in the world. Like, at some point in some loop, he has fought all of these people at some point. But specifically in this loop, Galfalion has been defeated by Orsted. But there's a side of me that almost wonders if Orsted knows how strong Galfalion will get. And compared to Rudius and his fight with Orsted, there's a possibility here that Orsted thinks that Rudius wouldn't be able to defeat him. That's curious. Or is it a possibility that he doesn't want him to fight Galfalion because he doesn't want Galfalion dead because Galfalion, or because of anybody under Galfalion, would not align with them if Galfalion was killed by them? That could be why, way back here, Orsted didn't kill Galfalion. He needed him to live in order to train somebody else or whatever, which is the assumption. He doesn't really want to kill people that are not directly involved with the Man God because they might be needed to birth a child, or help a person that's being captured, or buy a loaf of bread so that somebody else doesn't buy the loaf of bread there, so they buy it somewhere else, so that they run into this person, thus they get married. There's all that butterfly effect stuff. So I can see it both ways. It's either that he thinks that Galfalion will kill him based on his experience with fighting him, or that in fighting Galfalion, they will ruin relationship with somebody else that they need for their team. Interesting. But I can totally see in that past he didn't kill Galfalion for the sake of the future of Galfalion. Maybe even defeat him so that he got stronger. He could have bolstered him to get stronger. And that would be a really interesting thing to kind of get into later on. If Galfalion ever runs into Orsted again, he's like, well, I did that so you get stronger. You got stronger, didn't you? We'll see. We'll see. Again, I don't think they're going to run into Galfalion there. Unless he was told to go there, which I would think he would mention. You want me to go back home? Yeah, I don't think Geese told him to go to Sword Sanctum. I think he's told him to go somewhere else. And so they're going to get there at the Sword Sanctum and not see Galfalion, which means they'll probably run into Nina and her new husband. I kind of got lost in the weeds a couple of Mushoku Mondays ago, talking about what would happen when they get there. I said that something to the effect that Nina Falion, and finding out that they're like, oh crap, so Geese got to him. He said that he was going to go, fight Orsted. He's got to be working for the Man God. That's bad. And then Nina's like, oh no, Dad's working for the Man God? That's bad. I got to stop him. I don't think she'd care. Now, there's a side of me that believes that she would want to assist Rudius and Edis as a member of Orsted's corporation. Again, she's already kind of signed up to join them. And so knowing that Galfalion is working for the Man God, she would probably want to stop her father more on the idea of doing her duty as a member of Orsted. And yes, possibly giving her the opportunity to take down Galfalion in order to succeed him, to take over his position as Sword God. That could be as well. Either way, she's going to probably join them just for the sake of, fighting her father. Why not? Why not take him down? Now, they have shown a glimmer of the father-daughter relationship they have. There has been points where there is a sort of glimmer they show between the two of them as father and daughter. And that could technically stir up. It would be very interesting to get sort of a perspective chapter of her to really kind of get into the idea that in the end, he's still her father, and that she does have some sort of care for him. Maybe get into the idea of his struggle that he's been kind of going through ever since up to the point that Geese went and met him. That could be as well. She could technically want to save her father somehow. I wouldn't put it outside the bounds of it kind of gets into like all these other characters that feels like they're very simple. Oh, Nina, she just wants to get stronger. All right. And then you have a chapter where she really wants to fall in love. She takes that leap of faith, jump into love. A lot of these characters can be put as being very simple-minded. But when it comes down to it, yes, what are the chances when she finds out that Galfalion is working for the Man God and is going to go fight Orsted, and she trusts Edis and Rudius and that side enough that she's afraid that her father is just going down a path of destruction that's going to lead to his death, and he's on the wrong side of history, so to speak? Why not? Why not be concerned for him? But anyways, that's chapter 6. I think I got everything out. I think that's everything. Wow. How many hours are we in so far? Almost 3 hours of raw recording. Almost about 2.5 hours of raw recording. Probably almost 3 hours. Oof. It was a good recording. I don't think I had too much problems with my actual recording and everything. So, man, I'm glad I did not do this chapter with last week's Mushoku Monday, because that would have been a long recording. But I hope you guys enjoyed this week. My brain is swimming with ideas with this whole segment with Nanahoshi, and I'm pretty sure I'm probably going to forget something. Maybe I'll talk about it next week. I don't know. Or I'll let it stew. We'll see. Like I said before, this is kind of like Nanahoshi's hypothesis chapters. Like, my brain... Time stuff sucks. Time stuff just has me going all over the place. And I can make a million ideas, but it always gets broken by who, when, and where, and at what time gets transported to what point. It can easily get broken. That's why I typically don't like the time stuff. It's just like it's not even worth even getting into it, because it can just be broken just by a simple who, what, when, where. But anyway, it's fun stuff. It's more interesting to me to try to figure out the who parts. The who parts is the more interesting part of me, not necessarily the when parts, the who parts. That makes sense to some people. Like, again, who first? And who summoned who is really the big thing there. Was it Rudius was the original one to come over, and he brought the other two over? When was he brought over? Or in general, who brought Rudius, Shinohara, and Nanahoshi there to begin with? And why? that's the curious stuff there. So it was a lot of fun digging through it, and I'm sure that I'll probably think of some other stuff while I'm doing my editing process. It's going to be a fun one to edit because I'm probably going to think of a million things that I forgot to talk about. But as per usual, another really incredible chapter for so far what seems like a very, 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 very S-tier volume. It's going to have to go massively downhill at this point. How far percentage-wise are we through this? We're about the halfway point. That's about where we're at right now. So that's about the halfway point. I would probably say like we're probably about 45%, maybe 40% through the volume, which means it's crazy. I feel like it feels like we're already like almost done with this volume, but no, we're barely through it. We still got some cooking to do in this volume. This sucker is going to be so worn out from the cooking, it's not even funny. But I hope you guys enjoyed this Mushoku Monday. As always, really fantastic stuff. Inside Baseball, this is actually my second time recording this. First recording messed up. And it actually worked out better because I cooked way more this time recording through this than the first time. My first recording was not very long. I was in a pinch for time, and I decided at that point I'm just going to go ahead and do another recording of it. And I'm glad I did because this turned out to be a lot of fun to dig into this one the second time. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Hope you guys enjoy this this Mushoku Monday. As per usual, greatly appreciate you guys' support. Hit that like button down below if you've forgotten already. Hit it now. Hit it. It's free. It's just sitting there. It's like sitting there and it's going, hit me. Like as a thumb sticking out, it's ready for you to punch it. Punch it. Punch it. But yes, greatly, as usual, appreciate you guys' kind words, your support. All that stuff means so much to me. It means a great deal to me. Thank you to everybody that shares this out with your friends and everybody that you know on social media and whatnot. I greatly appreciate you guys spreading the word and getting the Mushoku Monday to where it is right now. The growth that we've had and the support and everything has been fantastic. But yes, as per usual, greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate everybody that support channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And until the next cooking session of Volume 23 of Mushoku Mondays, y'all take care. Orsted had never known about Geese's existence until now. Orsted had never known about Geese's existence. Orsted had never known about the existence of Geese until now. Orsted had never known about Geese's existence. It was as though foolish, huh? Perhaps this was his 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 foolish, huh? Perhaps from his perspective, foolish, huh? Perhaps from his perspective, the weird tongue twisters I make in this freaking outline.